this first section before looked pretty reasonable, right? It's like, oh yeah, he added like Google login. I know what that is. Firebase SDK. Good amount of people probably know what that is. Oh, he wrote unit tests. Like testing is good. Test-driven development, all that stuff. He's worked with JUnit and Java. I've heard of those things. He did a migration. That's pretty cool. And he also led the Android team. He has like good communication architecture skills. Like this sounds pretty good if you haven't spent a lot of time learning about resume optimization. But again, like this doesn't actually like show anything. It's mainly telling. And then if you look at it from recruiters' perspective, they probably they might know what Java is and they probably know what Google login, but they probably don't know. There's a good chance they don't know what JUnit is or Firebase SDK, and then they definitely don't know Room, which is a relatively esoteric database library within Android. And of course, the fourth bullet point is classic telling instead of showing. So like, how do we change this for the after portion? And again, like this, I envision a scenario where like they're just changing the content. They're not like they're just reframing the content. They're not actually changing what they did. So one like quick way to really show the impact is just put down the usage statistics of like whatever product you're working on. If it's an app, it's very public, right? You have in Google or Apple, you have like the number of installs and like, the number of ratings at least. So that's a very quick way to show like, okay, I worked on this app that actually has a bunch of users. So, technical complexity is inherently high, like supporting like 100K plus users. So that's impressive. Like a recruiter or anyone can understand that like, hey, an app with 100K users, that's impressive. Yeah, and another thing, like for the Google login, like explain the delta you created. So like, in this fake world, like before there was maybe only Facebook login or something or Twitter login, and then they added Google login. And then the impact is more people were able to onboard because some people didn't have the existing onboarding options, but they had Google, so it increased sign-ups by 30%. Again, these are just fake numbers, just trying to clarify the principles here. Same thing with unit testing. Like, how do we explain like in human kind of like regular non-technical terms, like what's the impact of unit testing? Well, the point of unit testing is to catch bugs. You don't write tests just to write tests and feel good about yourself. Like you're trying to catch bugs before they hit production. So yeah, like you have a number of like increasing test coverage. That's I think relatively easy to understand. And of course, like reducing the number of bugs. So like, yeah, reduced the number of like bugs like filed by customers by 50%. Again, that's clear. Anyone can understand like reducing bug tickets. That's plain English. Yeah, same thing with like migrating the code just to like a better SDK, like reducing the number of bugs related to database and just like increasing velocity of engineers. And then in terms of like actually leading the team, you can again try to quantify that. So like, oh yeah, like I actually built an entire onboarding process on my own, and I actually grew the team from X to Y, like 1 to 5 engineers. That's 5X increase. Like in this hypothetical that they're working for a startup. And then for technologies used, I've seen this on a good on my resume. I think this is a good strategy. You essentially have like all your bullet points in plain English, and then you have all the keyword soup at the end. So it's like all concentrated together. And then like, the recruiter can spend a good amount of time just reading like plain English stuff before they hit like all the technical stuff.
Yeah. I like this because I think it contextualizes the technology, right? Like rather than having a word soup at the beginning, which is like, here's all the technologies I'm familiar with. I like this a lot because it says, hey, in this particular job at this time range, here's the tools I used in order to have that business impact. So I like this format a lot. The other thing I like about the improved version that Alex put together here is that it really focuses on the business impact. That's one of the key things that I think people forget is that you're being hired not to write code, although you will be writing code, right? You're hired in order to solve a business problem. The end user, whether the end user for the company that you want to work at is a business or a normal user, they don't care about whether you use Kotlin or Java or Objective-C. They really could care less about the technology, right? They care about getting something done using the product that you're building. And so that's why focusing too excessively on like, I used the Firebase SDK, no one cares, right? They care about actually getting something done with the technology that you're building. And so you really want to translate that into something that the business, the recruiter, or anyone at the company can say, hey, this person is going to add that same amount of business value, that business impact to my company. So that's like probably the biggest thing that, there's a disconnect. If you go to a university or you go to a boot camp, the focus is deliberately on the technology, right? Because your intent, like the whole purpose is to learn something about web development or Android or about some theoretical computer science concept. But that's not what people care about when they're hiring you for a job function. They care much less about the technology and much more about the business impact. So that's the kind of the chasm that you have to be able to cross. And that's, if you don't have work experience, that can be quite tough, which is why, again, going back to this idea of side projects and being able to publish something, you're in control of your destiny there, right? You can build something and talk about the number of users you have, talk about the number of bugs that you reduced, the onboarding flow that you improved, and the things that you own and you built. So that's again why side projects are so important.